Welcome to Post Fame Plus, bonus content from Almost Famous Enough. It's like Post Fame, but also Plus, with Alexi and Glen.
I always have this potential to ramble on, but yeah, that's the whole deal. So welcome, Josh. Hot Takes with Josh.
Hot takes.
Yep. You've got a grin on your face, like you just can't wait to like unload some hot takes.
I was telling my girlfriend in the moments leading up to this, I was so excited. I flipped between a couple of them. One of them is not so much a hot take, more a statement. And then the others, I also even flip back and forth. I was like, well, maybe I don't believe in this. So
That's
we'll
even
see.
better.
I'm sure you guys have heard it before, but yeah, we'll figure out where we land and where you guys land.
Okay, well,
So,
we have to make sure that it's an actual hot take.
yeah, sure.
Cannot
fire
be
away?
a cold take.
Yeah,
I
definitely
don't know.
not. Well,
I
that
mean-
was another thing as well. I had told Ellie, I had said, well, I could just come in and just say something really bad, like Britpop is bad or something. And then I said, I don't want to just like fully have every single listener of this podcast get angry at me. So I decided to go something a little bit more mellow.
Well,
And
I'm
if
sure
people
you've
want
had
more-
8 people mad at you before, so that's okay. I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. Yeah, it's all good. Like I think you're kind of in the driver's seat though. Like as far as choosing which way you want to go. Like
Okay.
this is a hot take with Josh. Like you have the hot take.
Nice.
I want to hear it, and then I want to do what we always end up doing, whereas I somehow always find a way to try to counterpoint and sort of like get our way through it. Now
Yeah.
you told me one before that you'd been thinking about,
Okay.
which
you have to remind me.
was about ska.
Yes. Okay. So
And-
that was one that was more the statement, but it could be
Okay.
a hot take. So
No, I mean it's a hot take. I
Yeah.
think for sure. It was especially interesting to me because Lexi doesn't know what ska
I don't know what it is.
oh, get out. Okay. Really? You're
You know, but he said this at home because like my mom was asking about what we were doing, and the first thing my dad ripped is like what he would said to him apparently, and they were like laughing over it and starting to discuss it, and then my mom looked at me and she's like, oh well, what are you gonna say? And I was like, I don't know what we're talking about right now.
right.
which
Yeah.
makes
well,
it kind of fun, but
admittedly, I
it's-
don't listen to much ska either. I just grew up with my dad, who's like similar age as you or anyone that you know, like Micah, Thor, and all that stuff. And so I feel like if you were to compare me to other people in the office, like Brendan or something, there's even a disconnect almost in that in terms of the music that we listen to. And I'm tempted to say it's a generational difference, but there's only maybe 3 years between us, so maybe not. But I grew up on like my dad only listening to like modern rock stuff like that, and so a lot of it was what's it called? Like some of ska. I remember hearing the biggest one was Rancid. But yeah, that's
yeah.
kind of
So
what
now you're gonna make people mad because you're calling Rancid ska, and I'm
exactly right. Yeah, we're
I'm
starting.
pretty sure people would never categorize it as pure ska. Okay, so
Yeah.
we're obviously going down this thing. So, Josh, what's your hot take? We got to go down this path, obviously.
The first hot take with this is that ska is every major genre.
Well, as
Like,
you
we're talking,
described
like,
it to
top
me, it's in the
5,
center
6.
of the Venn diagram.
Yeah, like if you had like a
Of-
web of like every single genre and like kind of like the different how it branches off, or if you had a Venn diagram, like if you have, and this also leads to my second hot take, which we'll get to eventually. But if you have all these different genres, like pop, alternative, whatever, ska is at the middle, which is bizarre because I don't listen to that much ska. But it was on a road trip. We were headed back from Canmore just last weekend, and we were for some reason listening to ska. And I was like, okay, well, this is jazz influenced. It's like it comes from Jamaica, but it's in England. There's like rap influence. There's all of this. There's like rock, alternative, all of this stuff. And so that's what made me
Yeah,
think. I
yeah,
think this is
okay.
just yeah.
So that's which when you told me, you're like, I don't know about this, but I'm like, yeah, that's a hot take, right? Because, and again, what always makes this fun is generational difference, I think. And be it what it may, like your version that you got influenced by music in your house, and that's pretty common for everybody. Lexi will be the first to tell you that she's obviously highly influenced by
Yeah.
things that she hear me play all the time. But
Right.
this one's fun to me because Josh, like, I'm interested in how you hear all the different major styles in it. So you already sort of alluded to, and I'm not an expert, so this is like a crazy hot take conversation in a way, because like nobody's an expert here
I
to
don't even know what it
actually.
is still.
She still doesn't even know what it is. So I'm gonna frame it, and I'm hoping that this means like maybe you'll understand. Okay. So a lot of people would feel like what influenced the early ska-ish music was like Bob Marley and the Wailers, kind of like Caribbean, Jamaican. So Lexi, if you can think about music like when it's on that sort of relaxed 4, they're always upstrumming a guitar on
Okay.
the 2 and the 4. In the pop version, the only real pop version, there's a few, but there's like Smash Mouth, who have the big like Shrek hit, actually recorded like
Yes.
ska-ish like beats and sort of stuff in there a little bit sometimes. I'm trying to think of the other one that's always that Sonic Radio always plays in Edmonton, but so No Doubt began as essentially a ska/punk band.
Okay.
Okay, so if you hear them all of a sudden break down in a No Doubt song to where it's like it feels like they kind of cut the beat in half, and it's always this like like, but in real ska, it's like really fast, so it's like punk sounding.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah.
the guitars are always like, you know what I mean? It's just doing this thing like really quick. It's not just like all downstrum distortion. So, but they'll blend it. So it really blew up, I think, in the marriage between ska and punk, coming out of like a whole bunch of this stuff out of Southern California.
Yeah.
And I heard a podcast with Gwen Stefani, and she actually talked about it like that. Like that's where she thought it was exploding and what they were all into. But I'm interested, like now you're going to have to pull it up on your device or do something because now you're like still confused, I think.
What?
But so I'm curious about what's your intersection that you think ska sits in the middle of all the major genres?
Yeah, well, I think even you hit the nail on the head of like punk. So I grew up. This is another hot take, shocker. I was born in 2000. I consider myself. Now that I'm saying this out loud, and that people will actually hear it, and not just friends and family, I'm like, oh man. I'd consider myself. I would lump myself in. I'm not a '90s baby. But in terms of like technology and music and art, I would say I was kind of in that relative era. So I wouldn't say I'm a '90s kid. I always joke around that 2001 and over are the bad genre, or the bad years rather. But so like I grew up playing games like Tony Hawk Underground Skater. And that is like it had Green Day, it had what's it called? Dead Kennedys, California
Yeah.
Uber Alles.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that, right? And all of that stuff, and it almost like you said, I just hear so much of that punk or rock influence in ska. Maybe that's just the grouchy voices they have, but even like you're saying, like just like the fast, like bum, 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 bum of the ska, it's just I feel like that's like one major influence is all that punk.
Yeah.
Then of course you have the ska scene in England being huge, it coming from Jamaica.
Where's your Spotify?
Obviously, you could maybe nuance it a bit more and say, well, it's not classical or something like that. But even the instruments they use like brass instruments, which aren't
A lot of them
too
have big horn
common.
sections.
Yeah. And
You're
so,
right.
yeah, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel like it was borrowing different things from all these different genres.
This is the big one. Have you heard
Who's
the
that?
Mighty Mighty Boss Tones?
No, never.
Okay, so this song is super famous.
Okay.
We're using the microphone on here. Okay, can you hear this?
Yeah.
This is a famous tune.
Oh, I
Hear
totally
the
know
guitar
this. Yes.
going.
You're gonna get sued.
No, I'm not. Oh yeah, I can't play music on here for too long. Anyhow, so that was like one of the big pop versions of a ska band hitting it.
Yeah.
And they had the big brass band, the whole works. They would like wear all suits together, like a real,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
there was a strong stream of that in ska. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just I feel like that kind of era also as well had like carried into kind of like the punk era, and like I know I just mentioned it earlier, like that it borrowed stuff from punk, but I'm kind of blanking on songs specifically right now, but I just feel like it set it in a trajectory where it's just like these are so parallel to each other. For example, like punk and ska.
Yeah.
Um, but
Well, I
that's
mean,
just me.
no, that's a good point because like punk obviously having its strong overlaps with like rock, right? And a
Right.
certain vein of rock that kind of gave way to punk. When you think about that stream giving way to ska, because more so I think the culture and the lifestyle of the people making it was where the overlap started, the area of the country in the States, I think, and how it
Right.
got its influence probably is where it got that whole really strong vein. But then you get them putting in like big band or like almost like swing music, right?
Mhm.
Because that beat lent itself to like almost like bossa nova, if you're familiar with like the bossa nova beats, right?
Not
That are
entirely,
like,
but yeah.
well, if you can think of like someone plays like an old like boring organ from like church and it puts on like that beat that can just come, you know, it's like look it up after. Maybe bossa nova is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this classic certain sound, and you know, I just feel like that sort of lends itself. So I can hear where there's like swing, which is adjacent to jazz.
Yes.
Really? Do you know what I
Oh,
mean? So that's where you can start
yeah.
to draw a line, and then you get a band like No Doubt all of a sudden making it pop, or this Boss Tones, or people kind of bringing in pop. So, I mean, I don't know where the country influence might be in that
Yeah,
giant
maybe not something
circle.
like that. And so that's where I was like, there is nuance to say like, well, it's not everything, but I would say like look at major genres, and I would say it
Yeah, yeah.
100% comes from that stuff. I remember I'd been told when I mentioned, oh, because like one of the only songs I know of ska, I'm not a huge ska listener, admittedly, is Time Bomb by Rancid.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
then I remember because I thought they were, like, the biggest ska band before I know. And then people were like, "Well, then they used to be Operation Ivy." Did you listen to them?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have all of this stuff, and I'm like, I just feel like it started off as a small thing, and then it grows and grows and grows, and then you're saying it's kind of like the Californian influence on it? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
So
That's where it got the biggest, really.
and how did that shift? So, assuming, for example, ska came from Jamaica, how did that California influence change it?
Well, the California influence combined it, I think, with like the fast punk kind of like the overbeat rather than
Mm,
the laid backness of like a Bob Marley style of music, right?
right.
Um, so it like combined it with that version of aggression and sort of youthful angst got into it. And then I think what ends up happening and the way I heard it told, so I can only make the assumption is like because those circles and were so adjacent to each other, like the punk bands, like the young Green Days before they blew up or stuff, they
Mhm,
would go out on their tours and they would end up taking a ska punk band with them. So then
right.
it gets across the country. And you have to realize, right, this is probably happening at the beginning of the 90s before it really even popped off in the late 90s. And um, so late 80s, early 90s, that you know, these bands are now influencing and getting sort of spread across the country. And then you
Right.
get like bands that, you know, like the Boss Tones and these other ones that decide that they're going to do this other version with like the big swing stuff coming in. So, yeah.
Mhm. Well, and that even kind of pivots as well into my second take, which is, I guess, a little bit less focused, which has to do with genres, which is like, okay, could you consider, of course, we would consider ska to be its own genre, but
Yeah.
where do you draw the line between genres? So my hot take there is there are too many subgenres.
We have too many. It's
We
time
have
to just
too
stop.
many.
I think this is a cold take on this podcast. Like, Spotify Wrapped is proof of this. All the made
Okay,
up
what do they
new
do?
little genres.
Oh, like, yeah, she had a real like, you had a real problem with
I had a real problem because it was like, apparently,
you know
there's
what it
so
really
many
is,
now.
Josh? She's just mad that when it made up these subgenres like bedroom pop, that
Yes.
I got
Yeah.
did I have a younger year than you?
Yes, you
So
were
it gave
younger
me a
than
younger
me.
age and gave me the cool, mysterious subgenres
Yes,
that we've never heard
Right.
of before, like
because here's
bedroom
the
pop.
thing: if it's gonna give me a Spotify Wrap that's apparently about me, why are you saying I listened to like 58 different genres this year because there's so many genres now?
Okay, so then
No.
maybe it's not a hot take as I thought, but I was talking about Ellie, she listens to Midwest emo. Are you guys familiar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
No?
I it's
Yes.
bizarre to me. It's not my cup of tea, but I can understand how something like that or grunge can be its own genre.
Yes.
But you listen to, yeah, like a bedroom pop, or you listen to like a, I don't know, I would say like maybe hyper pop, even stuff like that, where it's just th- they take this gradient of pop and they're like they're slicing a piece of bread so many times that what you get, you don't get anything from it, in my opinion.
No
Um,
nutrients left.
None. So have you
Yeah.
guys
So
heard of?
explain this to me though with that statement real quick.
Okay.
When you say they're slicing the bread so thin, are you talking about the bands or artists who are trying to mix so many things? Or are you talking about the genre makers?
The genre makers.
The genre makers, like people who
Okay.
are saying, um, I am not a, for example, rock artist. I'm an alternative artist or an urban artist, or I do just bedroom pop, yada yada yada. I'm like, well, no, you do pop, you do ambient, you do like punk stuff like
Okay,
that. And I think,
hot take reply here is that the irony is that by trying to like counter it, you are literally sort of like splitting your own version of the bread into just the size and the version of slices that you want for yourself. Like, because all of us are genre makers, Josh,
okay, yeah,
right? It all started with anybody who needed to categorize it, right? So in other words, I drive across the country, I see my friend I haven't seen for a long time, long before you have the internet, right? I start
right.
telling them about like the kind of music I'm really into because these guys are playing it in my town, and he asks what it is. I can start by saying rock music because it's two guitars and a bass guitar and a drums and a singer, like a classic guitar driven four on the floor beat. Everything we would associate from like early Chuck Berry and Elvis on up. And that could be the easy starting point, but then I realized that's just too vague for my friend, right? So now
Okay.
I start like splitting it down. I'm like, well, it's rock, except they use this certain sound on their guitar pedal. Like, so I can start right there. I just start from the top and I start splitting, but I don't like to think of it as splitting. I just think about it as I just start like dovetailing off into my attempt to become as specific as possible to relate to somebody what the thing is if they don't know what the thing is already.
And I could agree with that in terms of like a way to describe it. You could say it's rock without a guitar or a bass, but it feels like you're kind of approaching. What is it? Ship of Theseus? Is that the right? Where like if you keep on putting on new parts, at what point is it a new ship? Where you're like,
Oh,
if you have if you have rock, but you take out an instrument, is it still rock? I'd still say yes. Or like if you change the time signature into a swing beat, is it still rock? It could be if you're singing in like a grouchy voice and you're hitting your tempo, like it could be. And so I'm like, I feel like people can describe it as these things. For example, I always go back to hyper pop saying that, okay, yeah, it's like you take pop music and just really dial it up and you really make it bubbly. But I would say it as a subgenre, I'm not convinced. To me, that's just pop.
sure. But if you tried to do the same tweaking to jazz, maybe it doesn't work to that genre to do the thing, but something about the construct of what we consider pop music, the tweaking works. and people accept it. And because people accept it and people start making that music, somebody has to say what you're. Sometimes genre is as much about saying what you're not as what you are. And we had a fun conversation about, we interviewed a metal band from Edmonton,
Mhm.
right? And metal is so like pretentious historically about their subgenres, maybe more than any other group,
Yes.
right? It's like, I am not speed metal, I'm not prog metal, you know what I mean? I'm not like
Totally.
screamo, I'm not, I'm specifically these things, and don't confuse me with that other thing. And you're right, that slice of bread is like cut so thin.
Mhm.
To you or I, it's a little bit crazy, but to them, it seems to make total sense.
Well, and maybe this is a bit black and white thinking of me, but like I hear like Alexi say, and of course it's Spotify, so their goal is to make people feel included and to
All the time.
make more money, right?
Yeah.
By like giving someone a really obscure genre, wow, look how cool and indie I am,
Niche
right?
you are, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I just can't help but feel like it's everyone wants to feel like humans just want to feel supported and they want to feel cool. Every single person in the world. I feel like that is just that. Like it reminds me
Well,
of
definitely the cool part, man, because that's why bands take their own genre so seriously, right? Because it's
yeah,
like, I want to be cool, and the only reason I started playing this was music so that I could belong to this club.
right. Yeah, well there is this band. Have you guys heard of Geese?
Oh my goodness, don't get me started on
Okay. Oh no, okay, I need to get you started. Okay, what do you think? I need to
Okay, okay, this is like the like hyper example I have of like people, especially, sorry, like Caucasian men needing to feel indie and niche and cool, and it's like become a joke with like my friend group because
Yeah.
literally like when it was small, a few of us had discovered them, but
Yep.
then it became like a gatekeeping thing about this band,
Totally.
and then because people kept joking about the gatekeeping of this band, then they blew up. And then people
Yep.
were like, the whole joke around it now is like, oh, well, like, if you listen to them, like, you're like, niche and indie and cool and stuff. But then, like, that's how they blew up. And then I'm
Right.
like, as soon as that becomes like the joke and, all this stuff, so good that they blew up and they deserve to. But I'm like, they only blew up because, especially like men, felt the need to like be niche about their music taste. And I'm like,
Right. Well,
you're not special, King. Like, I'm sorry.
No, only young white girls are special and are allowed to gatekeep their music. By the way, this is where I get to do the old man take on all this stuff,
yeah.
which is, you guys don't understand how many times this has happened cyclically in the industry. Like, I think of a
Totally.
band, Vampire Weekend,
Oh,
who
yeah.
who I didn't understand at first, but
Yep.
I considered it like nerd indie. Like,
Mhm.
we would make the joke in Edmonton, you'd see some musicians, and if the bass player was playing his bass like up here by his boobs, then we were like, he went to McEwen and in music program for sure, right? And then that somehow illegitimatized their like music because they have a bass
Right.
player who clearly went to McEwen music program. It's terrible, but that's what like that music was to me. And yet there was this nerd indie wannabe, felt like whatever it was that seemed to champion this band and
Mhm.
just shoot them into like, now I
Mhm.
listen to them a lot. They have one absolutely incredible
Okay, but
record,
what were
but
you gonna say about geese?
I have nothing to say
Well,
about Geese. I don't know. So
No, Josh.
yeah.
yeah, so I was gonna ask you, so I totally hear that, where everyone's just trying to feel, like, a different and cool, and I get it. You have as an artist, you want to succeed, you wanna break out, you want to pioneer your space, your sound, all of that stuff. But so I know you're asking me, but I'll ask you, what genre would you consider Geese?
Oh, there's like I would say there's indie,
Okay.
like, in there.
Is indie a
Mm,
In
genre?
there, that's like an umbrella
no, I know, I'm saying,
genre.
like, they're in the indie realm.
Okay, they start there.
And
I
what is the
don't even
indie genre?
okay, but this is where I was actually gonna go, is,
Bedroom
like,
indie?
not bedroom
Is
indie. Um, no, but this is what I was gonna say, I'm like, this is the other thing, like, for someone like me, if we're talking about generation differences, it's like, I have only grown up using, like, Spotify.
Right.
And because and this is where I'm agreeing with your hot take, when there's so many freaking genres, it's like, how do I even, like, A, know them all? Because apparently I'm learning a new one every single time I find a new band.
Yep.
B, assign them to, like, different things.
Mhm.
Because this is what I mean, like, even, like, I have Spotify up on my phone right now, and there's, like, a suggested playlist called Dream Pop Mix, so going into your
Right.
pop discussion, but every song in it, I would not consider dream pop, and it says dream pop music, also try, so it's, like, including indie, shoegaze, slowcore, easy listening, and
What?
alternative.
That's ridiculous to include all those because
So then
none of
it's like-
those are pop to me.
If the slices are so, like, thin, like, if everything's so, like, minute, it's like then there becomes so much crossover that you don't even know which one's which anymore.
Well, especially if you just are wrong. like I
Yes,
think
and someone in that
like you can't like that's like to say this is a dream pop mix and I'm going to include shoegaze and easy listening
yeah.
under that same
Right.
umbrella. That's like me saying like you guys should come out down to White Ave. I'm having like a pop-up donut stand. And then
Mhm.
you get there and I have like no donuts, but I do have things that I sort of deep fry to batter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like you would all get there and be like, what the heck, man? Like, where's
Yeah.
the donuts? And I'm like, well, it's like my donut mix. you
Yeah.
know,
Well, and
like-
so
Because,
this
like,
is
Geese I've
where
seen in, like, alternative, feel-good, indie rock-esque
Mhm.
lists. So then my
Right.
brain's like, that's where they belong. But I don't know if I necessarily consider them just that.
Well, it's funny when I said indie at the office and everyone said indie is not a genre. They said indie is independent as in you don't have a label. And it got
Not
me thinking,
anymore.
okay, well, what exactly?
yeah,
So
no,
like what is
you,
indie?
yeah. No,
And
that's a good question. And I think that's funny that happened
yeah.
because seconds ago, and again, this is slightly related to age, right? Because the emergence of the concept of indie as a categorization, yes, it started as the categorizers saying this is independent in a record store,
Yeah.
right? This starts where people had to file things in a record store before Spotify.
Right.
And so they would put all of the releases that were like major label releases that they get serviced, and then they would have a place to find the independent musicians.
Mhm.
And so instead of in that independent like thing that you're filing through your records, you could cross 10 genres. But because they aren't signed to a major label, we just threw them all in the same bin. Like technically you could make used a genre
Yeah.
because a record store would throw everything in that one bin, right?
Right.
But what's funny to me is when she pulled up Dream Pop Mix, my old thinking has always equated pop with mainstream.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
With
Mhm.
like whatever is popular on the radio that the radio is going to play as like the most widely accepted sort of version of like feel good music is pop.
Mhm. Well, and I wonder if it's kind of like how hip hop, for example, or old hip hop and R&B, they kind of a lot of like the sampling in there happened due to just kind of like the culture and the aesthetics, where it was easier to grab an old track, it like DJs like that were actually like scratching vinyls, all this stuff. It was just all in the culture. And so I wonder if indie has transformed from this thing where it's like maybe a lot of independent labels or artists rather, they didn't have access to all these instruments, but maybe they had access to a synth. And that's where you get kind of like the super bubbly synth noises or the super bubbly piano. So I wonder if like I could understand how that could change its way into becoming a genre, but to go all the way back to Geese, it's funny, I listened to that and as well as this other album. Are you guys familiar with Black Country New Road?
Mhm.
So I listened to
Only
Ants
the
From Up
name,
Here.
I haven't listened. Yeah.
Yeah, so they released this album, I'm tempted to say it was 3 years ago now, I think. Super, super critically acclaimed, just like Geese's newest album, Getting Killed. And I listened to it and I just thought, 'cause I saw Best New Rock Album, and I wanna say I actually believed in all the subgenres until I listened to them. 'Cause I hear Best New Rock Album, and I'm like, "Okay, like, let me give it a listen." I'm expecting something like The Strokes. I'm expecting, like, a wailing voice, just a searing guitar, and like a really catchy bass line. And I listened to Get It. Well, first I listened to Ants from Up Here. I'm like, this is like weird folky music, it kind of feels like. And then I listened to Getting Killed, and I was like, this is bizarre. Like it felt like kazoo music. I was like, what is this? This isn't rock. And I remember I literally told Ellie driving home, and I said, I really want to like this album, but I just don't. Like it's not rock to me. And then I sat on it for a bit, and I was reading some reviews about it, and someone said that it's not rock in the way that you think of, but it's them pushing the genre. So it's like we've had the same rock for so long. We've had the Strokes. We've had like I'm blanking on other names now, but we've had popular, like what you were saying, Glenn, with like two guitarists, a bassist, a drum, and a singer. Like we've had that for so long. And before that came something like Elvis Presley, where we're like, that's not rock and roll. That's a dude kind of going kind of
It's
singing
a
like
white
that. Like
guy stealing like black gospel music.
totally,
Yeah.
100%. And I'm like, the genres, they get taken, they get changed, they get all of this stuff. People push it in new ways. And I was listening, so I forced myself to listen to Getting Killed again. And it kind of, I don't want to say it clicked because I wasn't like epiphany, whoa, I get it now. But listening to it as its own album that like took a different kind of angle on what rock is was really, really interesting rather than listening to it and expecting some like super crazy high energy rock album.
Yeah.
And so I think that was like my point where I was like, yeah, like there are certain subgenres, like you can have shoegaze or you can have example for jazz, you have smooth jazz, you could have my cousin calls it chaotic jazz, but just like a cacophony of different saxophones, drums, all that stuff. Like you can have certain subgenres. But that's where I was like, I wouldn't consider like I would consider rather what Geese is doing just rock. They're pushing it in a new way. You know, if you have an album, a cohesive album, what's it called when you have a theme? I'm drawing a blank.
Concept album?
Yeah, concept album. If you are, for example, a folk singer, and on this concept album, you really want to explore some anger or something like that, and you just have like a screamo track, that doesn't mean that the album is now metal, right?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to like
Well,
kind
the
of
industry has called that crossover. So you're
okay,
right. Like and that's a distinct difference between like just genre blurring, like where someone would like gross umbrella categorize something, right?
mhm,
But especially in the world of like radio, they would always call something a crossover hit. So like, you know, Post Malone doing a country record. You know
yep,
what I mean? Like if he had just done one song and it crossed over and Post Malone was getting played on country radio, everyone would be like, that's a crossover hit. Or, you know, like when and this happened a lot the most in like R&B and hip hop and rap, which are sort of similar, but really crossed over on and started getting on radio because they would bring the popular elements of either pop music or what was popular in, you know, like the rap artists would start just like blending with others and it just became crossover. In other words, the people from over here like are going to play it alongside of their own preferences because it has so much in common.
yeah, and I'm glad you brought up actually Post Malone. That's kind of like my go-to example when I think of it, was when I was in high school. So he released, White Iverson, and it was like a smash hit. Everyone was listening to it. That was when hip hop and rap, I guess it's always kind of like the genre you listen to in high school, but it was just like a sensational song. Everyone had heard it, everyone was playing it. And then when he released the album for that, Stony, there was a song on there, Feeling Whitney. And I remember because growing up listening to all this, all I was like, "Oh man, like this song is like my favorite." But I still considered, even though it was, I'm a slightly more folky oriented song, it's still a rap album to me, or rather a pop album. It's I'd argue more pop than rap. And then he did it with the next album, Beer Bongs and Bentleys, where it's all this rap. He's hit the fame. He's got all these like crazy rappers on it, and then he has the song "Stay." And then that one's like a good bit more of a ballad, but it still is a hip hop album to me. And so I think that saying, well, it's like a R&B album because there's this one thing. I'm like, no, it's a hip hop album, and he's just kind of like pushing it in a different way. There's rap
Well,
songs on it, but he took a break for that one
y-
song.
yes, but it's not even took a break. I think what you're getting to is what I think a real important point is, which has rung around in my head while we're talking, which is w- the people listening or sharing or whatever are the ones getting the most hung up on, is somebody something or not, right? So
Sure.
like I talked about the metal people, or you talk about maybe the hip hop people, like the people who want to claim Post Malone,
Hmm.
because music helps us set our own identity, right?
Right.
Like people, it's one of the things, fashion, your friend group, there's different key things, especially when you're young, you use to set your identity, and you identify with this stuff here. So yeah, if you really, really identify with Post Malone when he's like heavy into the style of what he does,
Hmm.
um, then you're going to be jarred when he, plays like Stay or something, right?
Yes.
So,
Right.
but the truth is, the artist is the one who actually determines the genre, right? Because, how long is Post Malone consider himself a rap artist? Well, it might be for 13, 14, 15 years, but he's a person who's evolving. And that's why you see things like this happen where he's like, I'm so much more than this. Like, I don't want to just be this. I want to be more. And other people are going to confine me because they want me to stay this one version that they love. But you
Hmm.
hear Feeling Whitney on that record. And then when you hear the whole record, you're like, this sticks out from the record from what he was doing.
Right.
It's because if you get to know Post Malone, you'll realize Kurt Cobain and Nirvana was this massive influence on him.
Totally.
And when he plays that, and the way he kind of has this down strum on it, and the sort of just the strain in his voice, like that's a
Hmm.
Kurt Cobain sort of thing through an acoustic song,
Right.
to me. And so he wants the freedom to be able to be that thing a little bit, right?
Hmm.
It's not like he's saying to everybody, I'm a different kind of artist now. I just
Right.
have a song on an album that I wanted to do, and I don't think it's out of line or whatever. And so that's where it's fun to me, or funny to me, for the debates about genre, because
Hmm.
I think it ultimately comes down to an artist is just actually trying to express and be the thing that they've been craving to be and to do. And sometimes the thing they're doing is going to challenge what the genre actually is, because they appear, the whole like, if it looks like a duck and sounds like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. But
Yeah.
then you change one of those things, and then everybody starts to go, well, that seems like a little less like a duck, maybe,
Right.
and this is what happens. And sometimes it's out of necessity. Sometimes three guys get together and there's nobody that plays bass, right? But one guy who
Hmm.
plays like clarinet, and all of a sudden you have this band that's playing music that's clearly influenced by a certain style of rock, except
Right.
now they have this prominent clarinet and a guy who went to actual like music school. And
Hmm.
now everybody's like, how do I classify this? You know? So that's how
Yeah.
I think it happens, is like people make music and then people don't. Sometimes it just challenges us on knowing where we put that.
Well, and I think that that's another. It kind of popped an idea that I've also had in my head for a while. So we have the crossover in genres, right? And it's totally fine for you to be a rock artist that does a slower album, or that does like a kind of peculiar noise, like I mentioned with geese getting killed. And it's totally fine as the artist to be like, no, like this is a rock album and we're pushing it in this way. But I do think what has contributed at least a little bit to people kind of debating all of this stuff is, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, is the idea of the concept album. I think that that has also done a decent amount of damage to not only genres but artists. Where like before you would release a collection of music, whereas it feels
Yeah.
like now everything has to be thematic. It has to be a journey, and it has to be all of this stuff. You can't just release music that you've made.
Well, I'm wondering if you think that because of records like Cowboy Carter by Beyonce coming out, or things like this, which are concept kind of albums.
Yeah.
Like concept albums in the 70s and 80s were still very tight within the genre that that band was known to be in.
Mhm.
Now it feels like I only hear of a concept album when somebody wants to be super experimental and break out of their own box, which
And I
sort of
don't
enforces what you were saying. But I don't know if
yeah.
that's more of a modern phenomenon than an actual definition of how it happens.
I'm tempted to say it's a modern phenomenon, but it just feels like I haven't had an album. There's actually a couple recently that I've listened to. Granted, it's by like an amazing artist. Have you heard of John Baptiste?
Yeah, he's a genre breaking artist. Like he's
Mhm.
as
Totally.
savant
Yeah.
as our like for a 50-year-old guy who's seen a lot of musicians come and go,
Mhm.
he's as savant of a pure artist as you're gonna find. Like
Totally.
his I don't know if you've just seen him in an interview or a talk, like he's ridiculous. Like he's the type of guy
Yeah.
who you could just describe a song from the 80s and he would probably figure out how to start playing it having never heard it before. Like he's
Oh,
that kind of
he's
a
like
talent.
one of my favorite musicians of all time. I've seen like interviews with him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
I've seen
crazy.
everything. And I think his albums were actually like a good. I didn't listen to his latest one, but I listened to his one in 2025, Big Money. And that one seemed like and again I'm maybe a little bit nervous to say the word genre bending, but more or maybe genre bending is fine. But that seemed like an album where it's just him playing some funky, groovy music. And there's some like really folky stuff. There's some jazz stuff. There's all of these different types of music, and it's just him. The album is representative of him, not the
Yeah,
genre. Which I feel like a lot of artists, because they want to be thematic, they want to have all of these different things. The album isn't about them, but about like, well, this is an R&B album, so I'm only gonna sing slowly over a sampled beat, or I have to stick towards my persona, my alter ego that I've created.
sure.
And that's where I feel like the damage has been done, not entirely, but the idea of a concept album being so good. Like you have stuff like To Pimp a Butterfly, you have stuff like Igor by Tyler the Creator, which are just like I'd argue maybe modern masterpieces. And because they're so acclaimed, I think people have kind of like followed suit and been like, okay, well, I have to be super rigid in my theme and I have to stick to it and I have to do all of these things. So that's
But
my kind of gripe.
no, I think that's a good point. I'll say this as my observation is that if you feel like it's doing damage and not doing well, it's probably because it's just being done by lesser humans. Like a record being made by Tyler the Creator or Jean Baptiste
Mhm.
is being made by exceptional human beings in their craft.
Right.
Like Jean Baptiste, like if you just YouTube him and watch him do little things on talk shows or something where he like plays Mozart in like late 70s blues. Do you know what I mean? Like he
Mhm.
bends like his knowledge and his skill of just music
Right.
allows him to do a thing that only he seems capable of doing or very
Yeah.
few. And it's a gift to everybody. I think it actually that's why to me he steps outside of the genre conversation
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's
Totally.
irrelevant to him, right? Like all of its music, all of its notes, all of its blending and inspiration and all the best parts. And he, he's just impossible to put a guy like, and it's, I think that's what's really cool is like some people are so good, it's so hard to put them in a box.
Well, I had seen one video and again, and like talking about maybe I edit my thesis. And instead of saying there are too many subgenres, we'd say people need to focus more on the artist, not the genre. Maybe that's a better thesis to say?
And right off the bat, I would have come out of the gate agreeing because
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
history is that the splitting of the bread, so many times saying, is by people who are trying to control the version of how you find music.
Right. Yeah.
In other words,
Well,
they're not the ones making the music. So
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it had reminded me of, I don't know if you guys have seen the clip where big one was by Drumeo where Chad Smith plays 30 Seconds to Mars without hearing it. Have you guys seen this video?
No, but I've
No.
seen the kind of same concept by a number of
I'll
things
send
on
it to you
TikTok.
after this.
Yeah.
Genuinely, I've never just been speechless before, but like I watched this video and it's just unreal. So that's by the company Drumeo. They also have one for piano and they had John Baptiste on it. And so the idea is that they play a super famous song without the drums for Drumeo or without the melody for the piano one that John Baptiste is on. And so they play him Sabotage by Beastie Boys. And so they get rid of all of like the guitar, and it's literally just this like super visceral drum break. So you just hear like a boom,
Yeah, yeah.
and so they say you have to figure it out. And you see him, and he's playing this just ridiculous. His hands are flying across the keyboard; they're going everywhere. And they're like, "Well, like, what would you change to it?" And he goes, "I'd change nothing to it." But even just him playing. And he wasn't actually playing anything, like, serious, he was more just kind of just touching notes and, like, putting things where he felt like they belong, and, like, that is a perfect example where it's not really a genre, and, like, if someone were to put it in a subgenre, I'd be like, "That is just completely incorrect, that is just Jean Baptiste doing his thing." So I
Yeah.
would say that, yeah, I have been slightly nuanced on this take, that we've arrived at focusing less on the genre and more on the artist,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, like, have you ever heard of Racing Mount Pleasant, the band?
No.
Okay, my friends and I discovered them, and they're actually funny enough, they're opening for Geese now on a couple shows,
Get
which
out.
was a fun
Okay.
crossover. You should listen to them. Don't
Yeah.
Google them first. Listen
Okay.
to their album. Which one was it? It's called "Grip Your Fist, I'm Heaven Bound." Listen to it, and then just think about what you would maybe say for a genre, because I had listened to the album, and then a couple of my friends who are, like, also pretty geeked out about music also listened to it, and it was, like, maybe the first album that I've listened to start to finish, and I'm like,
Okay.
if you asked me to categorize it, I'd probably give you 8 different answers and say they're all of these and none of these,
Yeah.
and I couldn't do it, and I actually went and I, like, Googled after the fact what genre is Racing Mount
Well,
Pleasant.
you can't tell him.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna.
Okay, yeah.
But Google says, let me read, not out
Okay.
loud, but they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7
Okay, so I'm the
genres
type of
listed.
person who, if I read that description
Well, they're
where
not
they
like
say all those,
genres.
they are. And
But,
I would
like,
be like, I won't listen to this band if somebody's
okay, but
gonna
this is
try
what
to
I'm saying.
describe them this way.
Google gives like 6 firm genres and says they blend
And
these.
4 of them are pretty high umbrella
Yeah.
level.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then also categorizes them as like a different thing. Anyways, but if you read me this list, I'd be like, yeah, I could see why they're all of these and none
Can
of
I
these.
tell them what I'm seeing in the picture below?
No.
Okay, never mind then.
Oh,
It's-
okay.
That might
I will
influence too
search
much.
after.
It'll
But I think it's totally reminds me, and even the name is similar. You said that band, or sorry, the album "Grip Your Fist, I'm Heaven Bound," and
yeah.
like this feels like exactly like "Lift Your Skinny Fist Like Antennas to Heaven" by Godspeed You Black Emperor.
Mm,
Are you guys familiar
yeah.
with them or not so much?
Yeah, I mean, that's going back quite a ways. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's funny, I had never heard of them, and I'm in North Carolina with my girlfriend, and we're seeing her brother, and we're in this thrift shop, and I see this super bizarre CD, and it's got this, like, shiny black or copper writing on it on a black CD, and I open it, and there's, like a police CD, and I'm like, "What is this?" Like, "This is something bizarre," and I show it to her brother, and he's like, "Oh, yeah," like, he knows a wicked amount about movies, any media, he just knows it. And so he's like, "Oh, it's Godspeed You Black Emperor." And then naturally, Ellie was like, "Oh, you haven't heard of them? Like, it's just, like, super, super popular. I think they're from Montreal or wherever." And, I listened to them, and I'm like, same thing. This is not a genre. This is just them. This is just
Yeah.
someone I heard categorized it as, like, riot music, which I thought was quite funny.
Yeah.
But, it's just it kind of reminded me of what you were saying, Alexi, where you have this band who, like, you could ask 5 different people on the street, and they'd have 5 different answers, and so
And they're
it's just
all
like,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
you just choose, and you're like, it's just them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I will keep that in mind. Grip your fist. I'm heaven bound.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, we got 2 hot takes for the price of 1 tonight,
Maybe
which is
3,
like
4.
maybe some extra like
They were just edited.
yeah, maybe just
2.0.
some personal biases that could become a hot take at any moment along the
Right,
way,
of course. Yeah.
which I think is fantastic. So, and you changed your thesis possibly, which is always like
I think so.
what a
Bold
place
move,
what a
yeah.
place to arrive at if somebody's actually willing to reevaluate something after a hot take discussion. So that's
Yeah,
pretty
we
great.
will have to work a little bit harder to nuance me on my dislike of Britpop, but we'll get there.
Mm.
We'll come back to that one.
Yeah.
And maybe if you're like really wanting to dive on the ska, I'll play you the Christian ska band that I knew in the late 90s. I designed like their merch for them for a
Crazy.
little while. They were called
Unreal.
Days Wage with a Z in Days.
Mm.
So
Badass.
pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyhow, thanks for calling in and joining us, Josh. I think you asked if this is going to be a recurring segment. I
Might
think
have to be.
it clearly has to be
Yeah.
now.
Well,
So
I'm the only one
we'll
that's
figure
this
it out.
opinionated, so yeah, there'll be
Well,
more of me, I'm sure.
You got it. You might be the only one left who's willing to be opinionated, which is a nice thing in the world. So
Yeah, I don't
it's
have any
great.
social media, so people can't put their pitchforks at me, so it'll be okay.
Love.
I love it. I think it's great. Okay, man. Well, thank you. Appreciate
Thank you guys.
calling in and doing this. And I won't see you at the office tomorrow because I won't be there, but I'll see you soon.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Thanks so much for hosting, guys.
Okay. Thanks, Josh.
Take it easy.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. So
Hey.
we were going to maybe do 2 parts to our night and do a whole post-fame along with a little feature of
And there
hot
might
takes
not
with
be time
Josh.
now.
No, there isn't time. Like this is way longer than we thought it was going to be. So, oh wait, what? Oh,
He's
don't-
asking if he should have left.
Oh no, it's that's so funny. Yeah, we don't really have a post-fame segment. Then I think this has got to be the whole.
You know what?
thing.
And our post-game segment can wait till next time.
Yeah, we'll do that. And this was a fun little
Yeah.
adventure to take, especially because I think that these things come up actually like in a lot of the conversations that I
Mhm.
have with actual artists.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, like the genre thing, it's come up a couple of times, like where people are like, I don't know where somebody's categorizing me, or you see a lot of artists very often. They're like, oh, I don't know. Like like
Mhm.
when we talk about people who appear at the folk fest, right? And whether traditional folkies
Yeah.
get mad about the new folk showing up to
Yeah,
play,
yeah.
and
New folk.
and then and then bands get caught in the middle because there's that sort of coolness you're supposed to have where you don't care,
Yeah, yeah.
but you kind of do care. And then sometimes I can dig that out, in a conversation on the podcast. But so I thought it was kind of interesting because it made me think just of some of those conversations, especially we referenced like Stryker and the metal conversation. But I thought talking about ska was kind of funny.
Yeah.
for
And
a
no
while.
better person than Josh. He's got the level of like weird. I mean, I don't want to call us niche after the conversation we had, but there's like a level of having like music knowledge and then like that kind of niche music knowledge. And I like grabbing another niche music knowledge guy on the podcast.
Yeah, I like that he thinks about it, right?
Mhm.
Without having the need to come out and claim to like fully know what he's talking about.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
some people
yeah.
won't talk about something until they feel like
They could like spew the knowledge.
I'm the expert on
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
or I don't want to be told I'm wrong. And
I feel like I've
instead,
been the opposite on this podcast. My bad.
okay. But okay, well, I guess that's Post Fame Plus featuring Hot Takes with Josh.
Yeah, not with Alexi, with Josh today.
With Josh today. No, okay, maybe.
Because he was, yeah.
Yeah.
You feel me?
I feel you.
Yeah.
I'll have to find a way to play the new theme music.
Oh,
in here.
yeah.
Plus our Post Fame Plus music, which I forgot I had, which I really like too.
Oh,
We'll get them both in there.
okay.
All right.
Little
Love you.
double action, yeah. Love you too.
Bye.
Bye. And